Hey, everybody, we're live on Tuesday. It's the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online, pastorscottshow.com. Phone number is 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Talk about issues of the day from a Christian perspective. Go to 11.
June is Pride Month, and last Friday the Giants held their Pride Night at Oracle Park. But three of the team's pitchers created controversy by adding Bible verses to their Rainbow Pride caps.
What's wrong with that?
Well, that's the question that many people are asking today. And the San Francisco Giants, I am not, by the way, a Giants fan. When people ask me my favorite baseball teams, number one is the Dodgers. Number three is the Padres. I know Padres fans wonder how that's possible, but it is. I lived half my life in both places, and I'm okay with that. It's a one-way rivalry as far as I'm concerned. But my second favorite team is any team playing the Giants, right? That is.
Now, who can argue with that?
That is exactly how that works. Anyway, the Giants, however, we're going to talk about them today because four pitchers in the Pride Night they had the other day in San Francisco decided to do something different. What they decided to do was, one, decided not to wear the Pride hat. The Pride hat is the rainbow hat, right? It's got rainbow up in the letters and the rainbow, whatever they're doing with that. And then three other ones wrote a Bible verse, Genesis 9 chapter that talks about the rainbow after the flood. Well, a lot of people aren't having it, particularly up there in San Francisco. Listen to this guy, this reporter, how miserable he sounds, actually. Number 1212.
Yeah, hey, Dan. The palms here at Oracle are decked out for Pride Month. Pride Night is supposed to be a celebration of inclusion here at Oracle, but it's now drawing a lot of backlash and intervention from Major League Baseball towards several players.
So it's supposed to be a night of inclusion. So my question is that what this is about? Is it about inclusion? What are the Pride Nights about when they are at a sporting event? That's question number one. Number two is, what happens when what should happen if a player says, you know what, I'm not participating in that? It's an interesting thing. There's Christian nights at ballparks, but they don't make the players wear crosses, right? And it's completely something that happens before or after the game. There's usually a concert or somebody gives a talk. There are nights, I went to Dodger Stadium once and it was Mormon night. And there was 700 people in the upper deck wearing white shirts and ties and 1,000 10-speeds in the parking lot. And that was okay. Nobody had to wear anything. It was all fine. I've never seen this with anything else. Only the Pride Night. Why is that? Why do you think? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. And is there a difference between what it's supposed to be about and what it's actually about? 888-528-2557 is the phone number. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. Jose is reminding me that Blake Trinan did that the other day here in Los Angeles. Of course, Los Angeles has had its own problems with the Pride festivities, particularly a few years ago when they had that outfit that just openly mocked Christianity.
I can't believe it.
Well, you should. And it was a wild thing. Did I go to that game? I think I went to that game. I feel like I was not one of the invited guests to that game, but I remember they did whatever maybe it was another night. It wasn't, I don't think I was there at that game, but there was something else I went to or whatever it was controversial. The game starts at 7:00. The gates open at 5:30. The first moment you could be in the stadium is at 6:00. And it was after that. It was like the year after that, I think it was, that I was there. They did whatever they did at 6:00. There was like nobody except for me in the stands. Then they just wanted to get it over with and get it out there. Well, the Giants in San Francisco, of course, it's a different thing. And am I right, by the way, that this reporter just sounds miserable? Let's do 1-2 again real quick. 1-2.
Yeah, hey, Dan. The palms here at Oracle are decked out for Pride Month. Pride Night is supposed to be a celebration of inclusion here at Oracle, but it's now drawing a lot of backlash and intervention from Major League Baseball towards several players.
He's just kind of sad there, isn't he?
Yeah, hey, Dan. The palms here at Oracle are decked out for Pride
palms
Month.
Are all, and somebody wore a Bible verse on their hat. Can you believe it? How should a Christian respond in these? Maybe at your workplace, you might have some kinds of things happen, like this. It may not even be the pride issue. It might be some other issue that you're expected to sort of endorse or celebrate or get behind. Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between participation and endorsement of this or anything else? Where is that line? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Here's a little bit more of the story, 1-3.
Giants Pride Night at Oracle, an annual June fan event for the LGBTQ plus community. But for many, the event was marred when three Giants pitchers, Landon Roop, JT Brubaker, and Ryan Walker, was seen with the biblical verse, Genesis 9:12-16, written on their rainbow pride caps, which says the rainbow is a symbol of a covenant between God and all living creatures.
So a biblical verse, it says, and God said, this is the sign of the covenant I'm making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on earth. That's what God said to Noah. It's the sign of the covenant. And that's the rainbow for a Christian. That's and probably I think for most people until recently meaning the last 30 or 40 years, that's been really what it is. So what happens if you haven't been to Pride Night in a sporting event is it's not just something that is happening with the fans, which would be one thing. It's interesting to me that the players are forced to change their uniforms and participate. And many players today, in particular religious players, not just Christian players, but you never hear the complaints if it's a Muslim doing it or, somebody else doing it. It's the Christians who get the criticism. But you feel like, hey, am I endorsing something that I don't believe in? And what is this really about? Because if it's about loving your neighbor and caring for everybody in the image of God, and hey, we shouldn't be hateful to people, that's one thing. But I think the movement has moved away from any of that, if it was ever there anyway, when it came to Pride and Pride festivities. I saw one guy who's homosexual, and he put this video out, and he's showing the gay pride parade, which was he just shaking his head and going, you know what, I'm a banker. That's what I do for a living. And this parade that's supposed to be about me is full of furries. And it was a bunch of people in dog and cat outfits dancing around and doing sexual motions and things like that. He says, I don't want any part of it. See, I think it has changed. And I think that there is a place where you are endorsing something rather than just participating. And if they force you to wear the uniform, then I think that that's the case. What do you think? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. And maybe, have you ever been pressured at work to support a cause that you disagree with? How far does that go? I suppose any of us can work at a place where something is happening where we don't quite agree, right? We don't agree maybe politically, or we don't quite agree religiously. Maybe it's something in these areas, but there's something that maybe the company has a contract with a company that we're not too fond of. All of that. Jose, you've been pressured here at work not to wear shorts, short pants. Is this a religious point of view for you?
No, it's just it's hot outside. Please let us wear shorts.
we laugh about that, but for some people, a dress code is a little bit of a problem, right? If you want to wear a head covering, for example, and your employer won't let you do that, how far do you go? Is it a safety thing? Like I remember there was an issue with a few years ago with some Muslim women who had their hijabs on, or their head wasn't the full one, but it was a head covering. And they weren't allowed to wear it at certain places at an amusement park. But the reason was because they were afraid that it was going to get caught up in the roller coaster machinery or something and kill them. Like that was a safety reason. But they took it more as a religious reason. I think that, and as you get into the story, it's not just a moment of, hey, we've seen this before and some people object and let's just move on. It's becoming something else. It's becoming, hey, if you don't agree to this, if you do not agree to this, then you are a bad person. And listen to how this is being interpreted. Go to 1313.
Giants Pride Night at Oracle.
I did that one already. Go to 1414.
They defaced the Pride Rainbow with a Bible verse telling the LGBT community that they do not own the rainbow, that God owns the rainbow.
Sid Ziegler, co-founder of Outsports, calls the Pride Night display disgraceful.
If I were a Giants fan, I would never attend a game again.
So it defaced the rainbow by the Genesis passage on there. And God owns the rainbow, and we own the rainbow. So we're really going to have a Major League Baseball discussion about that, and we own the rainbow. What was this guy's name who said this?
That God owns the rainbow.
Sid Ziegler, co-founder co-founder of Outsport. Sid Ziegler.
Oh, I thought it said Zig Ziglar. I thought, hey, that guy's really changed his tune. If you ever followed that guy. 888-528-2557 is the number. 888-528-2557. Have you ever been in a situation where you're pressured to do something, to participate in something beyond just, something I think that most people would say is, something that makes you feel like you're making a statement that goes against your beliefs? 888-528-2557. Steve in Corona, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, happy Monday to you, Pastor Scott. Or Tuesday, but
Hi, that's anyway. All right. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're on every day.
Yeah, and you're great every day, too.
Thank you.
Now, let me just share something with you. An ex-professional baseball player, and there are probably many, many listens to you out there because I do get some calls, because I've had some professional ball players call me and say, hey, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. But once you sign a contract with the Major League team, yes, you're their property, you belong to them, and they're obligated to pay their salary. Now, as a Major League Baseball player, if they want to or have you wear their uniform for whatever reason they have, because the front office has to permit that, you do it. But it doesn't mean you agree with it. And having a Bible verse, converse to what, like the other guys did in the Giants, I'm for that. And I agree with the guy. The rainbow actually belongs to God because the rainbow was here before you and I were here.
Right.
The rainbow was coming before you and I were even thought about from your mom and dad.
So what's your experience with Major League Baseball? Did you play?
Well, I played professional baseball, yes. Minor leagues mostly, but I did play in the big leagues during the wintertime. Winter of 69, winters of 70, winter of 79. And all the big leaguers and I played together. And we all agreed that, yes, you do sign a contract with your team, but it also doesn't mean you have to agree with what the team or the front office agrees to.
Now, back then, did they make you do something? Did you have to promote Bud Light or some, what? Did they make you do something that you felt uncomfortable with?
No. As a matter of fact, Bud Light, I appreciate Bud Light, but I don't like beer. I don't drink beer. I mean, I like lemonade. That's my favorite.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. But let's say, if you had and I was just putting that out there, I was thinking of what in the world would have been controversial, back in the 1970s. And you're like, I am not wearing that collar. We're going to just order. What, were you ever, and I understand what you're saying with a contract. I wonder how many baseball players or sports players or anybody at another company is signing a contract where they don't realize that one of the things they might be asked to do is wear something and promote, let's say, behaviors or politics that they do not agree with or that they think are bad. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah. Well, you draw the line pretty much your agent speaks for you, but that's usually the wintertime. And during the winter, you do not see what they can do during the season. You're already signed the contract. You're already their property.
So
if something happens beforehand, you have to abide by what they say because they actually do own you. But it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them.
So, but you would say to these players that you just got to wear the hat that they want you to wear and just move on. Don't put a Bible verse on.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, wear the hat, but let the audience, or in this case, the people and the fans out there recognize that you're a player of Jesus. You're playing for him.
So how do you do that? How do you do that if you have something on that makes you feel like people aren't going to see that? Or that maybe Christians are going to see you as a hypocrite because maybe they know you're a Christian and then you're participating in that and they're like, you know what? What's wrong with Steve wearing that outfit out there?
Well, this is the way you do it. You don't say it verbally. You don't use your mouth. You use a glove. You use your bat and use your arm and fielding techniques to speak for you. If you're one of the big players and you get interviewed down the road as a big player or one of the big league players, that's when you have the opportunity to talk. That's
I see.
when you hand the microphone.
So you're
That's
saying
when
you
do it.
just be the best baseball player and you'll have an opportunity later.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right.
Definitely.
All right, Steve. Steve, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. So that is one of the issues here, right? Is that you did sign a contract. Major League Baseball, on the one hand, they're sort of defending the players because they're in a weird place because there's no other issue that I can think of. Can you think of anything, Jose, Eric, where they make any sports player wear something that might be controversial or political or to choose sides of some hot topic? I can't think of anything, right? If it were Christian night and they made you wear a cross, well, that would be weird, right? I wouldn't want that. Well, maybe when Eric was suggesting maybe with Black Lives Matter, when that happened, I mean, that was a thing where several people thought this organization, like the issue, I think people said, hey, you know what, we need to make sure that we're for equality in that. But other people were saying, you know, the hundreds of millions of dollars that those people are getting in that organization is not going to black communities, and I don't like that. I think that's eventually where that went. That's why that's gone, right? So that would be one short period of time, but that's not all the time.
I do remember with the NBA when they were in the bubble over there in Orlando, like they made players could choose to have like a personal message on the back of their jerseys. I think one player had like BLM or Black Lives Matter. Another person chose like education reform. Like that's the only time I
they
remember.
let anybody put anything they want on their jersey.
Yeah, like to spread their message.
Man,
And it was funny.
could you imagine if that would happen today? You know, you have people with MAGA hats. You'd have people with, I guess, murder the president. That's something else other people want to say. You know, it's what a mess.
I mean, you could go on eBay. I'm pretty sure you could search up like those jerseys specifically for the bubble. They're like crazy. They're probably going for thousands of dollars because they're like limited edition jerseys.
You know, you should check that out.
Education
Can you just
reform.
write your own thing on a jersey now and go, oh, look.
Yeah, you can probably do that.
Yeah. We're not here to commit fraud. We'll talk about that later. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557 was the number, 888-528-2557. Some people were forced to take a shot that they didn't agree with back in those days.
They really should wear the mask.
And, at what point should you be allowed to object to that, which became a very political thing. Right. At one point, it was, hey, we got to get rid of this pandemic, and a lot of people were kind of on board with it. Eventually, they're like, wait a minute, though, you're going to force me to do it after I've already got the COVID. It doesn't seem like it's really what people are promising. It doesn't seem like it's a good thing. And the science behind it is pretty weak. So you should have been allowed to object to that. And some people weren't. I know somebody who got fired. She was a nurse. She was a nurse with people really dying of COVID. And she had the spacesuit on and did the whole thing. She got the first shot, and then they fired her for not taking the booster. After she, as a nurse or scientist, if you will, realized that, hey, this isn't what they're telling us, and I'm not sure that it's safe. And she had real good reason to think about that. 888-528-2557, Pastor Scott Show. We're talking about Pride Nights and San Francisco Giants players who are being criticized for not participating or writing Bible verses on their cap. Let's go to 1515.
Landon Roop told the Mercury News he meant no hate at all. It's what he stands for as a believer in God. Major League Baseball is now involved, issuing a warning to the players. In a statement to Outsports, a spokesperson says the writing on the cap violates our rules, and consistent with normal practice, we have warned the players about future violations. Pitcher Sam Hentges opted not to wear a pride cap at all, wearing a regular cap instead. The LGBTQ community says more to come on this incident.
So there you go. There's more to come on this incident. So it's not just, hey, I don't agree. It's that you are forced to agree, right? That is, I think, where things are being changed, where it isn't even just, hey, it's about a contract. It is, we're going to have competing statements about issues here of the deepest of all beliefs. And somehow this is interrupting baseball. I think these things are wrecking sports. I don't think it should be about anything. I think baseball should be about baseball, football about football. Just play the sport. Let people get away from all the huffing and puffing that goes on everywhere else. But what do you think? 888-528-2557. Have you ever been in a situation where you were required to do something that went against your beliefs, or you were required to be in a position where it looked like you endorsed something that went against your beliefs? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. We'll be back as the Pastor Scott Show continues. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We're live on Tuesday. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557, number 8.
I think the Pride Night sports leagues, hey, we're going to celebrate the sexuality of anybody, I think is long since past in terms of its significance. And I actually think, again, it's working against gay people now, because when you mandate speech, you have moved from, hey, we're seeking tolerant respect for our choices, just allow us to live as we see fit, to I have to celebrate the way that you are choosing to live. So if you're these Giants players, you come into your locker room, they give you a rainbow hat. You're like, what are we doing here? I don't understand how Major League Baseball's position can be, we're going to mandate that you wear these uniforms, and that is a form of speech, clearly. But if you disagree with the speech that we are mandating, we're going to punish you if you speak out against the mandated speech.
That was Clay Travis talking about the issue with San Francisco Giants players. 4 pitchers on Pride Night did not participate in the way they were supposed to, according to the agreement with Pride Night. 3 of them wrote Genesis chapter 9 on their Pride hats. One of them just decided not to wear the hat. You're seeing that kind of objection in sports all over. I think there's 1 or 2 sports teams, like hockey teams, who just said, we're not doing this anymore. I wonder if Clay Travis is right that we're kind of moving away from that this has become something that is no longer about, hey, you know what, everybody ought to be treated fairly and not discriminated against, versus if you don't believe what we believe, if you don't believe in our social cause, then you're a bad person and you're going to suffer some kind of penalty for that. Do you think he's right about that? Is that changing? I'm not sure. 888-528-2557. Have you ever been pressured at work to support a cause that you disagree with? And what did you do? Did it cost you anything professionally? What's the right thing to do for these baseball players or anybody who's facing something like that? Is it, one caller said, well, you signed a contract to do what they tell you to do. And his thought was, you know what? As a Christian, you do everything as unto the Lord. You make yourself a great player, and then you're going to get the microphone, and then you can tell people about Jesus. That's certainly a good approach to, I think, any of it. Should employees of a company be required to participate in company-sponsored social causes? You know, it could be a lot of different things. Even if you are working for a Christian company, you know, should they force you to participate in a church service? Should they force you, at what point does it just go too far? How do you respond to all of that? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557 is the number. 888-528-2557. And, I think that we have got to get to a place where we just can separate the social issues from things that everybody should enjoy. So some of these people are saying, I don't think I can even go to a game anymore. I don't think I'm because somebody wrote a Bible verse on their hat. To me, the Bible verse shouldn't have anything to do with somebody going to the game. Everybody should be able to go and enjoy it and be about baseball. But I think for believers, when we're talking about things that are convictions that we have, what is the best way to stand for those things without becoming angry and disrespectful? It's okay to be angry, but angry and disrespectful is something else. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. I want to hear from you. Being a pastor and the host of the Pastor Scott Show and being a pastor, what I do for a living, what I believe is just put out there all the time. right? It's eventually I go to a wedding or something if I'm not doing it and I'm sitting in the reception or sitting next to somebody. Eventually they're going to ask me what I do. Or if you're a talkative person and you're on an airplane, you will eventually ask the person you're next to, what do you do? And I've had all kinds of responses. Normally what somebody says to me when they find out I'm a pastor, what do you do? Well, I can say now I'm a host of a radio show. Oh, really? They're always interested in that. What show do you host? That's the second one. I host the Pastor Scott Show. And then you get this mixture of response. Now if they're a Christian, they're sort of like, really? And then they get into it. But if they're not, what I get normally is I get people who start telling me about all their friends and relatives who go to church somewhere. Like that's the normal thing. It's like, oh, really? You're a pastor? Oh, you know what? My Uncle Bob goes to church, and I met his pastor one time. He seems like a nice guy. You know what? My niece goes to church somewhere. It's funny how we kind of do that. But I have had people immediately shut off. One time I was at a wedding, sitting at one of those round tables they put you at. And the bummer of the round table thing is if the table's too big, if it's like a 10-person table, then it's really hard to talk to the people across the table. They're like just a little bit too far away, and there's probably some centerpiece that you can't see through, and it gets, annoying in all of that.
Well, you got an attitude with you, I'll tell you that.
I want to talk to that person sitting over there. So you're stuck to the person to your right and left. It's like an 8-person table, you might be able to do it, right? But 10, it gets to be, just hard to converse. So anyway, so I'm sitting next to this guy, and he's real talkative and interesting. He was from Australia and a whole bunch of other stuff. We're talking, what do you do for a living? And I was the pastor at First Baptist at the time. He goes, well, I said, well, I'm a pastor. And he immediately looks at me, and I'm not kidding. This guy was older than me. He must have been like 60 years old. He picked up his chair, and he turned it in such a way that the back of the chair was facing me. That's what he did. And he didn't say a word to me the rest of the evening. He wouldn't even face me, and he didn't even say why. It was just like, you know what? I'm not talking to you anymore. Oh, he didn't address anything. And you know what? I think as a Christian, you should just say, fine. You know what? Jesus didn't tell us this was going to be easy. He said it's going to be hard. Some people are going to reject you. Dust yourself off, pray for that person and move on. And the person to my other side, I don't remember who that person even was at this point. Maybe there was nobody there, or maybe the food came and probably had the food, probably got the cake, and was probably disappointed by the wedding cake, and then it was time to go home. 888-528-2557 is the number. Have you been in a situation where you were at your workplace or someplace where you were forced to do something that you didn't want to do because of your beliefs, that went against your beliefs? Maybe it was something political. Maybe it is something to do with pride, or maybe it was something else that you were required to do. 888-528-2557. What did you do? How did you respond to that? 888-528-2557. I think it's important to think about, because I think those things are coming more and more often. Yeah, I think that in other years, there's been people baseball players or other sports people who have objected to the Pride Night thing. Bible verse, Clayton Kershaw did that. I think it's the same verse, the Genesis 9 verse last year. That's how he handled it. And you know what? Some people said something, but that was it. Maybe because he's Hall of Famer, retired, you don't care. But there was not a controversy about it. There was, hey, this is a Christian guy, and we all know that the pride thing is a little weird, so we're going to be fine with that. I think most people are on a page where they don't care. But I think this one getting so hostile, maybe it's because it's in San Francisco, and it's sort of the belly of the beast of all of that, but I think that the hostility is growing because, as the polls are suggesting, as fewer and fewer people are supportive of this. It's actually changed. And I think when that happens, it makes people who are trying to push a particular agenda more desperate because they feel like they're losing. And I think the agenda has just changed. It's changed to a particular place where nobody really wanted it to be there in the first place, where it's no longer about, hey, treat people fairly and don't discriminate against people because of those things. Instead, it's, if you don't believe the way I believe, then I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to dox you, and I'm going to do all kinds of things against you. And that should not be done. I feel like we should be in a place where we can work alongside people who disagree with us or who have different views or different orientation or whatever it is, and be able to do our job and be able to have a life. And then in a personal relationship with that person, you can talk about the difficulties, maybe spiritually, with those things. You can talk about the issues that are there. I think that you find that to be a whole lot better. This is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online. PastorScottShow.com is our website, PastorScottShow.com. You can follow us on social media, podcast, our live stream, all of those links. You can watch the Pastor Scott Show right now live on Rumble at Pastor Scott Show, and you can follow us on YouTube and all the rest at Pastor Scott Show. Hey, I want to take a minute. If you are looking for a way to protect your retirement in these uncertain times, I want to tell you about Sanctuary Metals. Sanctuary Metals is a Christian-owned, faith-based company that allows you to secure your future by helping you move part of your IRA or 401k into physical gold and silver, not just paper investments that rise and fall with the stock market. And if you got an old retirement account, maybe from a previous employer, or if you're over 59 and a half, you might be able to roll it over with no taxes and no penalties if you qualify. The best part is it only takes about 15 minutes to get started, and their team will walk you through everything over the phone. They handle the paperwork, they're the custodian of all of it, and your metals are stored safely in IRS-approved vaults, giving you real peace of mind. You can call Sanctuary Metals today at 800-801-9877, 800-801-9877. And when you call, make sure you tell them that Pastor Scott sent you to see if you qualify for a no-fee-for-life precious metals IRA. You can also learn more online at sanctuarymetals.com, sanctuarymetals.com. The phone number again is 800-801-9877. 800-801-9877. Past performance does not guarantee future results. All right, you're listening to the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557 is the number, 888-528-2557. When we come back, we'll talk about the B-52 bomber that crashed up at Edwards Air Force Base yesterday. Kind of a sad story, and many of you listening are either up in Edwards or maybe you're in Palmdale, Lancaster, and maybe you've got some thoughts about that, but we'll update you on all of that and consider everything going on with that. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online. Phone number is 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Pastor Scott Show, we're on every day from 3 to 5 live right here on this station. And we got to get, I'll read your note later. Jose's sending me some notes, but it like drops off the screen there, so I'll find that here in just a minute. Pastor Scott Show, we're live. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back, everybody. We're live. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Go to 11-1.
Yeah, Jonathan, we're learning a lot as we go into the evening hours after this fiery crash here at Edwards Air Force Base. Now, we know that it's going to be a process before there's going to be any cause of the crash that's released. It could potentially take months, and we're continuing to learn more about the people who actually were on board during this fiery crash.
Today, Edwards Air Force Base experienced a horrible tragedy, and we lost 8 great Americans.
Yesterday, a B-52, which if you're not aware is a huge aircraft, just a huge aircraft, crashed out at Edwards, not too far from all of us, and right out there where I grew up. So for some of us who grew up in the high desert, or maybe you've worked on some of those aircraft over the years, it's always a big deal when something happens out there, and particularly when it's test pilots. And so we've been thinking about that today. Go to 11-2.
The Air Force says around 11:20 this morning, a B-52 Stratofortress bomber was running a test flight mission here at Edwards when it crashed shortly after takeoff. Now, this was a fiery crash. Investigators say it was quickly determined that no one could have survived. 8 people determined to be dead. In the last 2 hours, the Air Force said on board were a mix of military personnel, government civilians, and military contractors. And as we said, in the last 10 minutes, the airport parts manufacturer Boeing came out and said that 2 of its employees are among the deceased. The company is now working to support their family members.
So it is a big deal. Maybe you know something more about it, or you grew up, or you know some test pilots and just kind of want to know how things are going. You can call now, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. The test pilots, and I have known many of them and many people who work with them, it's a big deal whenever, and it's such a brave thing to do. I mean, I get on an airplane and I worry about, the pilot is any good, right? And he's done 900 trips. 888-528-2557. Go to 11-3.
Now, the Air Force says this mission was part of a program to modernize the radar systems on the B-52, which is a long-range bomber that's been used by the Air Force since the 1950s. The Air Force says they don't know the cause of this crash yet, and that won't be released for some time. First, a safety review board will investigate for the next 30 days, and then a separate board could take up to 6 months to release their findings. Today, the Air Force tells us their priority is notifying the loved ones of those 8 people killed in this crash.
Yeah, it's just it is a terrible thing. So we want to remember those people who lost their lives, the families who are getting that terrible news when that happens. And we want to thank people who are brave enough to do it. Imagine if people are just not brave enough to be a test pilot. And the bravery of getting into an aircraft, B-52 has been around a long time, so there'll be something that happened here. There's been the planes were from the 50s, right? So the airframes are actually, I looked it up, 60 years old, some even longer than that. So I wondered how much of that plane is still in the 1950s, right? Well, most of it's been replaced, the engines and the workings of it, but the frames are that old. So they've been around a long time. And right now, the investments, they're saying they're going to have B-52s flying into the 2050s. So 100 years of service for that aircraft. I've been on some old planes before, but nothing like that, I think. But the bravery of people to try out all these things and to do that is an incredible thing. I think it says a lot about human beings, that some people are just so brave to get into something they know is death-defying and to do this, to really do this. So growing up in the high desert out there in the Antelope Valley, I remember I was a little kid when the space shuttle was rolled out. And I'm dating myself a little bit, but maybe I'm not as old as you think. So I was a little kid. And I went out to Edwards a few different times for different things. And one time was when they rolled out, it's the Space Shuttle Enterprise, which never went to space. And it was basically a mock-up. But it was the first thing that took off. You know how used to see the space shuttle on top of that 747 flying around, which we saw all the time growing up. It took off from the top of that plane, and we watched this happen, and it glided down. It was a test flight for the ultimate space shuttle program. And I remember that day. I must have been 5 or 6. I was a little kid, but it was exciting. It was exciting to be all the way out there at Edwards. It was exciting to be around all those planes. And then I remember there was a bunch of planes that we got to go see. And I remember actually burning my hand on the landing gear of like an F-15 or something that I decided to walk up to and touch that had been flying not too long ago. That's something I learned. In fact, I'm just now remembering that. Don't touch the wheels of an aircraft shortly after it's landed. That's a mistake. And there was a feeling out there too of, even as a kid, just being very proud of your country as a little kid. And then when the shuttle lands, the first time that landed, I was out in the backyard at somebody's house playing wiffle ball. And we heard the sonic boom. We didn't really know what to expect. We knew the shuttle was coming in. We heard the sonic boom, boom. And I think there was like 2 of them. And then we looked in the sky, and it let off a couple of, I don't know what came off of it, some kind of, something came out, just some kind of steam vapor off the edge of it. And we ran inside to watch it land, and that was really cool. And if you ever went out to watch the space shuttle land in real life, thousands of people would go out to Edwards to watch this. And I went out there and watched it after the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, which, it was a different time when that Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. Are you guys old enough? You guys probably weren't even old enough. Eric, how old were you, Eric? You must have been 2 when that happened. So I was in high school at this point. And I remember where I was when that happened. And you're getting to the place where, they had a teacher on it, Krista McAuliffe. And so this notion of spaceflight becoming something that civilians would go to. Anyway, when that happened, I was in school, and, people today, I think if we had that kind of disaster happen, would probably get let out of school and you'd go home, there would be therapy classes or something. Not us. not us in the Generation X. What happened to you? If you remember where you were, this is what happened to me. I heard about it at a break, and then I immediately went to class. And I go into class, and it was a physics class, and the teacher was Mrs. Calger. If you're still alive, you made me like physics. You're a great teacher. Anyway, so Mrs. Calger, she gets up, and she goes, well, you might have heard the news, everybody. The space shuttle blew up. Now open your books to such and such. That was it. That's all we got. There was no talking about it. There was the space shuttle blew up, and then let's get right to work. we all remembered that. That's just how we handled things back in the day. Anyway, it was a big deal, obviously, for not just the country, but for everybody in that area where I grew up there in the high desert, because so many people are test pilots. Many people go on to be astronauts. And of course, Edwards is there. The shuttle is landing. And so whenever the shuttle eventually went back into service and took off, the very first landing, thousands of people, must have been 1 million people. We went out there at the crack of dawn, watched this thing land. And it was an amazing thing. The space shuttle didn't have, when it landed, it was basically just a glider, but they called it the brick because it would just fall out of the sky and land. It came down so darn fast. And I was looking at it through binoculars, and I would have been maybe a senior in high school. I don't remember exactly the year. Maybe I'd graduated. I don't remember the year now, but I was out there looking at it in binoculars. And by the time you finally spot it in the binoculars, it's on the ground so fast. And all of those people in there who are risking their lives, it is such a brave, brave thing to do. And at the end of the day, those things are pushing society in a better place. The technology that gets developed, what happens because of space, all of those things, it's why you have better water today. It's what develops safer aircraft, where flying is still the safest way to travel. Doesn't seem like it would be, right? Everybody's afraid, but actually it's very safe. You're more likely to get in an accident on the way to the airport than you are on the plane. And these programs and these pilots who do all of this, it protects our freedom because of what happens in the military. It drives technology in a lot of ways that have really helped people. It's lifted people out of poverty. There's so many things that happen because of the technology. And none of it could happen if you didn't have test pilots. None of it would happen if you didn't have people who are brave enough to say, yes, I will fly in the washing machine at tremendous risk to myself to move things forward. I think I'm inspired by that. I think that kind of thing is really good. It helps us look forward. It helps us look to the future. You know what else is inspiring is that those test pilots and the grief that these families are going to go through, the other test pilots and their families and the fear, they're going to go on. They're going to keep flying those planes. They're going to keep moving forward. And when we can do that in our life, when we suffer a tragedy or we suffer a defeat of some kind, and then we look up and we say, well, there's still more to do, and we keep doing that, I think that's good. Spiritually, I think that's one of the things that Paul talks about when he says, leave behind what's behind. Just leave that in the past and move forward. There is so much hope in life when you can move forward. There's so much hope when you can move forward and be brave and do the things that you are called to do. Anyway, I've just been thinking a lot about that with this crash out there, reminding me of so many things growing up and all the brave people. Can we just take a minute? I want to pray for those families who lost their loved ones on that plane. God, I thank you for brave people, for bravery, and for the courage that it takes people to do dangerous things, but things that ultimately help the world in so many ways. God, I pray for the families who are suffering today because of the loss of their loved ones. I pray, Lord, that you would comfort them, that you would surround them with people who love you, and that you would be with the community at Edwards and in that area, people from all around who work there, who know the people who are involved personally. There's children. There are so many people. And Lord, we just pray for them and we lift them up today. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, this is the Pastor Scott Show. We are on every day from 3 to 5. You can go to pastorscottshow.com, pastorscottshow.com to follow us online. And while we take a break, take a minute to go visit your favorite social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and give us a follow. We're at Pastor Scott Show, at Pastor Scott Show. Give us a follow on there, and you'll see more and more of the Pastor Scott Show. And let your friends know that they should follow us also on Pastor Scott Show social media. We'll be back in just a moment on the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. We'll be back as the Tuesday edition of the Pastor Scott Show continues. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody, it's the Pastor Scott Show. We're live on Tuesday. Go to pastorscottshow.com, pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. Phone number is 888-528-2557. If you want to join the conversation, we talk about issues of the day from a Christian perspective. Go to 21.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history.
That was Governor Newsom yesterday with a surprise announcement that he and his wife are under investigation. And in his speech, I'll let you hear part of it here, he went and said he's being attacked politically for political reasons by the Trump administration, by Donald Trump. And he claims the whole thing is politically motivated simply because he is viewed as a possible 2028 presidential candidate. I think for sure he's a presidential candidate, at least for a while. But who knows? According to Newsom, investigators have contacted friends and former staff members and other people in his circle. Go to 22.
One by one, anyone who has challenged Donald Trump has ended up on his hit list. And today, I proudly join that list. After calling for my arrest last year, Donald Trump directed his Department of Justice to investigate me. And just in the last week, I've learned that his campaign has reached my own home. To get me, he's coming after my wife, Jen, a public servant, a woman who's dedicated her life to supporting women and girls. Someone who has done nothing wrong other than having the temerity to advocate for what she believes in. If they can't intimidate me, they'll go after the mother of our children.
Now, the problem with this announcement that he's making is that there are certain questions that actually have been asked, and it's not coming directly from the White House. It's actually coming from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento in an investigation that's been going on a long time. CNN's Ellie Honig explains here, number four.
Well, based on what we know right now, Caitlin, I think there's serious reason to doubt the narrative that's being offered by Gavin Newsom, which is that he is being specifically targeted by Donald Trump for political retribution. Now, to be sure, it is a fact that this administration has done that time and again, from Letitia James to Jim Comey to Jerome Powell to Mark Kelly on down the line. But based on the facts we know here, we don't know everything. It does not appear that that's what's happening here. First of all, very importantly, as Paula said, the reporting is that this investigation did not initiate from Donald Trump or even from prosecutors in D.C. So not from Pam Bondi when she was AG, not from Todd Blanche. Rather, it arose organically from the U.S. Attorney's Office out in the Eastern District of California based on a whistleblower complaint, reportedly, which is a normal way that cases start. And second of all, if they are, in fact, investigating people around Gavin Newsom, as Paula just reported, then sure, you would expect feds to be knocking on doors and asking questions of people around Gavin Newsom. So I think the narrative that he offered up today is self-serving and a bit overly simplistic given the actual facts as we know them.
It's really interesting to me that people have come out and noted that right away, and in part because the governor spends time pointing out how the Trump administration has gone after all kinds of people, and you might think they're guilty or not, and all of those kinds of things they call it the retribution campaign. I think that's maybe been kind of true with some of them. Do you really, Comey, Jim Comey, that guy's made enemies on like all sides over the last few years. He's been indicted now for the seashells on the beach that he took a picture of and put on his Instagram that said 8647, like it was a threat to the president, which it might very well be, right? For an average person posting that on the internet, probably nobody cares. But when the former head of the FBI does it, and you have a president who has survived and had several assassination attempts, including another one this weekend, I guess, at that event they had at the White House potentially. It's a serious thing. But is Comey really going to go to prison for taking a picture of seashells, or did he put those things up there? I don't know. Can you imagine that guy? He's like almost 7 feet tall, Jim Comey. I don't know if you know. He's huge. Can you imagine him on the beach with a bunch of seashells of 8, 6, 4, and then putting it on his Instagram? Anyway, whole nother story. What we're looking at here, though, and let's just say that whatever criticisms he wants, for the sake of our argument today, whatever criticisms he wants to say about Donald Trump, let's say that those things are true. But that does not make him guilty or not guilty. That has nothing to do with it. And what the reporters are saying is actually this is not the same as the Comey thing, and it's not the same as some of the other prosecutions that have come out of the Trump administration. This is something that's been going on for a long time. How do you respond when somebody accuses you of wrongdoing? Is there a tell if somebody is guilty? Or do we get ourselves in trouble? Like, have you ever had a situation where somebody accused you of doing something wrong? How did you respond to that? What's the right way to respond? Whether you're guilty or not, there's probably a difference, right? If you're guilty, how do you respond? Number one. If you're not guilty, how do you respond? What are the things that seems to be that they ought to be clear if you're being accused of something, whether that thing is true or not true? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557 is the number. Newsom went on to criticize the president for a whole lot of different things, some of the typical things that the president may or may not be eventually in some trouble for. 2-3.
The White House has become a marketplace for sneakers and coins and watches, cologne, guitars, Bibles, and phones. Influence for sale, access for sale. And today, my family and I can personally confirm that justice is for sale.
Is there a Trump cologne? Did I miss that? Is there actually a Trump cologne? I don't know. So he is taking these accusations, and the accusations that are out there are pretty significant, and a lot of them have to do with his wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, or SJSN, as some people call her. She's not his wife. She's the first partner. That's what he likes to say about it.
I take offense at our policies and strategies.
Well, she's founded a nonprofit called the Representation Project, and critics have noted that corporations and tribes and other organizations with business before the state donated to her nonprofit while Newsom was governor, and they deny conflict of interest. But there's something called behested payments, where this is something that's unethical or illegal, where a politician will say, I want you to donate to a particular nonprofit, and on the other side of that, I'll give you special benefits. And the Newsoms are accused of that. They are accused of getting a lot of money from that. They don't make a lot of money, but somebody gave them a $9 million house, for example. And there's a whole lot of that stuff going on. And her nonprofits have received money from PG&E, I think one of the electric companies anyway, if not that one. They've received money from other groups that then got a bunch of benefits from the state later. And people are saying, are those connected or not? And and the thing is that we don't really know at this point. But what we do know is that there are other accusations going on here that is not just a political thing from the president, even if he, in fact, is involved in a more direct way. How do you respond to the way people deal with your innocence or guilt? How important is it to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest? Because that's where the governor is putting himself here, is that there's the appearance of a conflict of interest. The president has that as well with a lot of those other things. That whether or not it's ultimately true or whether or not it's ultimately going to happen, the accusations are more likely to fly from enemies when you put yourself in a position of conflict of interest. And what about the idea of being above reproach? If the governor is innocent, how should he respond? Right now, he's blaming the president, but what about the accusations that are there? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. How should a leader respond when they are accused of something? Any leader, whether it is the governor or the president, or if it is just you, just somebody in your role or somebody that you know. 888-528-2557. Here's some more from Newsom's statement. It was an extraordinary statement. It was an extraordinary statement because it just kind of came out there and said, hey, I'm being accused, it's political, and I'm going to go after the president. And then he continues with this. Go to number 424.
To Donald Trump, who I know is watching because he watches everything, I have a message for you. You can subpoena my records. You can investigate me. You can harass me. Put my name on every and any enemies list you have, but leave my wife and family out of your personal vendetta.
I do not like it when people do go after family. I don't like it when people go after the president's family or President Obama's family or even Biden's family. You know, sometimes there's a place to do it. You know, if Biden's family was laundering money and selling access, well, then they're kind of wide open for that, right? There's something there. But if not, leave them alone. You know, leave Obama's kids out of it. Leave the Bush kids out of it. They drew some headlines here and there. I'm for that. Even the spouse, you know, unless the spouse is involved. And in this case, I understand the governor wanting to defend his wife, but it's her nonprofit. There's a lot that is being accused there. And then he had this written statement for his wife, 2-5.
I'd like to say something to my wife. These times are not normal. They're not ordinary. I love you. And I'm sorry he's doing this. You have not earned a single one of the indignities that he's trying to inflict on you and our children.
That's where he lost me there. Like, why can't you just say it? Like, hey, honey, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. This isn't fair. It seems like you should be able to just say that. How do you respond when you are accused? And just so that you know, we'll let things play out. You know, there's all kinds of politics involved, and there's all kinds of things being said. But clearly, you have a real investigation that is whistleblower driven, and that is something that does involve the governor and his wife. And so it's not all about Trump. It's something more than that. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. What do you think, Jose?
I mean, it's just, if you're innocent and you got nothing to hide, just cooperate. It's like when spouses, they accuse the other person of cheating, and they're like, I'm not cheating, and then the other person says, okay, let me see your phone, and then they get all defensive about it.
Yeah.
What does that say to you?
That's
you got
right.
something to hide. So, I mean, if Newsom's wife or Newsom himself has nothing to hide, just like cooperate with them. I think that'll earn you like favorable points with people and how they see you.
You know, when you are accused of something, right? I was accused, I've been accused of different things. As pastor, that happens, right? The Bible tells you that, that's why there's a whole rule for how to accuse people in leadership and stuff. You should be able to do it if there's wrongdoing, but it's coming, so you need more. Whenever I've been accused of something, I've been able to just show my phone. So one time I was accused of essentially not responding to somebody and not setting up a meeting. And I totally did. And they just didn't do it. And that person accused me in front of a bunch of people. I handed the phone over, and they could scroll through the whole thing. I had nothing to hide. And it proved myself right. So I feel like when you're really innocent, you just say, look, this is the deal, right? And when you're not, you shift things around, or you call out the other person's faults, right? Which I think is a lot what Newsom is doing here. He's saying, here's all the things that Trump is doing wrong. 888-528-2557. How do you respond when somebody is accusing you of something, whether you're innocent or guilty? What's the difference? How should you respond? Oscar in Baldwin Park, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hello, Pastor Scott. Thank you for taking my call. First of all, I haven't really got too much of the story about Newsom, what's going on. I know I saw the headlines being investigated, so he's going to respond like Newsom the way he is. So, whatever. Whatever. But to answer your question, I think that the most normal thing when you're being accused of something and you're not guilty, you get mad, right? You get mad because you're yelling. You want to yell like, you know what? No, I didn't do this. And when you're guilty, I think you lie about things. You're actually more calm, I think, because you're scared. you got caught. So I think tendency to either get mad when you're not guilty, and you lie when you're guilty. I just want to share this for too. Scott, I was hearing a sermon. I said Dr. Charles Stanley about David when he got when his man when they got the family kidnapped, the 600 men wanted to stone him, and he didn't do nothing but stay still. Be calm and just give it to God. And put your faith in God, and that. And let God handle it. I just heard that last night. I just was on my mind right now. You brought that up. They were accusing him of leading them in the wrong way, but eventually it worked out in his favor. So
Yeah.
I just think that if you're not guilty, you shouldn't have nothing to worry about. If you're guilty, you got a lot to worry about. So
I think
that's how I see it.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably right. And I think it's, Oscar, thanks for calling. I think that getting mad, even when you're innocent, like you're probably mad either way. But if you're guilty of something, you're mad and you're scared, and you've got to come up with what you should do is just confess, even if it means you got to quit your job or resign or whatever. But most people, I think you get mad and afraid, and then you deflect or you blame, you come up with a strategy. But if you're innocent, I think our first response is to also get mad, right? I think that's normal to get mad, but then you can respond in a way that either makes you look guilty or that, makes you do something, then now you're guilty of something that you weren't guilty of before. It's important to get mad well when you're accused of something. 888-528-2557, Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. David in Culver City, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, Pastor Scott. Well, first of all, if I'm accused of something, I always consider the source. Who's accusing me? What's their motivation? Do they have a motivation? I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, to comment on Newsom. This is a political genius thing to do. He probably isn't. There probably is something going on, and it probably was started from a legitimate investigation, like Ellie Honig said. But the best thing he can do in a very blue state where most people do not like Trump and his Justice Department is to come out, the best defense is an offense, to attack, the people that are accusing him.
I think
this is political genius. He got out ahead of it, and I think he's going to stay ahead of it.
I think politically you might be correct there. He asked for a Freedom of Information Act, and he's asking for whatever records of him and his wife might be in the Trump administration and all of that. But if he's guilty, though, of something, then it's not morally right what he's doing, even if it's politically expedient.
You know something? I don't think you can talk about morality in politics. I mean, look at all the grift going on with Trump.
well, don't we expect? I mean,
in Albania, crypto.
Well, let's just assume all of that's true for a minute, and he shouldn't be doing all of that either. So what?
Well,
but shouldn't we expect something?
They all do it.
So we should just shrug our shoulders and go, "Good for Trump and good for Newsom," because they're politically beating the case back.
No, I'm not shrugging my shoulders, but I think most people do expect that from politicians and don't think it's a big deal. We don't judge. If we judged our politicians morally, I always hear from evangelical Christians that we didn't elect a pastor, we're electing a president. We're not judging any of our politicians based on morality. You've got to do heinous things.
Well, the issue is should we? So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate your call. I think you're right. Politically, it's the right move politically. 888-528-2557. Is he right, though, that since we expect that from politicians in general, do we just let it go then? Do we just say, oh, that's pretty smart politically to get out in front of it and to turn it against Donald Trump and to use whatever there is about Donald Trump, and to do that, to cover it up, let's assuming he's guilty of something? Or, what is the right thing to do? And should we, and is David right, that we just shrug our shoulders when it comes to leaders? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Ted, City of Angels, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
God bless you, Pastor. You got a lot of patience. Ted, City of the Angels is correct, Los Angeles in Spanish. I just wanted to talk about, I know he's concerned about his wife and his kids, and I understand that. And that's really was the plea of the right, that please don't go after our children. Please don't tell us that men can be in girls' sports or vice versa. And that's really, his wife is a big supporter of that LGB mixed up.
Her nonprofits are very much about that. She's hugely controversial, actually.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think we should go after his kids. We shouldn't go after his kids.
No,
but
not
she's
at
fair.
all.
She's fair game because she's involved.
Well, the fact that he's crying about his family, that's what we've been crying about. We want you to leave our kids alone.
But
we don't
how
want
do you?
to operate on
What's
them.
the right way for a person to respond when they're accused, even if they're guilty, or even if there's an investigation and they might be guilty? What's the right thing to do?
Well, is it Jose that's your fellow commentator?
Yes, my fellow.
Yeah,
sure.
He. How could you top what he said? I mean, he's exactly right, 100%. And I mean, it's just, and we do want honesty in our leaders. And I don't know what Eric's talking about, and he's claiming to be evangelical. I mean, give me a break. Of course, we want honesty. We don't want people going after our kids.
I don't think Eric is called today. I think you mean somebody else. But
no, I meant David. David.
There's another Eric. I'm pointing to Eric back there, going, "Hey."
Well, actually, to be quite honest with you, David got cut off on Jennifer Horn, and then he came in under.
Hold on.
Hey,
Ted, I got to go to a break in a minute. Appreciate your call, but the big issue there is how are we responding? And what David's point was, hey, we expect this from politicians. I felt like he's saying, so what? Trump's a bad guy too? Is that how we should respond? 888-528-2557. Hey, one of the things that you got to take care of is your sleep apnea if you've got it. The symptoms are snoring and grinding your teeth, and there's more. I was doing all of that. The biggest symptom was my wife punching me in the side, telling me to stop snoring, or I'm going to have to sleep in another room. Well, I finally dealt with it, and I went to go see Dr. Eddie Simon because he's got a different solution than the CPAP machine, and it works great for me. You go to his office here in Los Angeles. They give you a CT scan, and they examine your neck and your throat and your tongue and your nasal passage, the whole thing. And he's created a mouthpiece. It's like a miracle device. It fits in my mouth perfectly. It's comfortable. It moves my jaw forward while I sleep, puts my tongue and throat in the right position, and I breathe normally. And it's resolved my sleep apnea, stopped my snoring. My wife is happy. I think this can work for you. Call Dr. Eddie Simon at 800-92-SMILE. That's 800-927-6453, 800-92-SMILE, or go to tmjexpert.com for Dr. Eddie Simon. Tell him Pastor Scott sent you. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Pastor Scott Show. We're live. 888-528-2557 is the number. 888-528-2557. Let's go to 21.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president. Because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history.
That was Governor Newsom yesterday announcing that he and his wife are under Department of Justice investigation and immediately blaming President Trump and calling out all the things President Trump is accused of. And in listening to this, I thought it's interesting when a leader does that because he didn't address what the investigation is or what really is true about it. And I thought, you know what, whenever we are accused of something, whether that is true or not, how ought we respond? And, is he responding in the right way? Ashley Zavala is a journalist. She works for the Globe, and she did some investigation. Here's some of what she had to say, 3-1.
I've heard from multiple sides of this, including several sources close to the situation. Here's what we know. Now, this all apparently started with the banks associated with the nonprofit organizations and businesses that are associated with the governor and his wife. Apparently, these banks were subpoenaed for the financial records of these entities. Now, it's not clear exactly which ones as of tonight. Then, last week, according to the governor's office, more than a dozen people associated with the Newsoms were either approached or interviewed by the FBI. Family, friends, former employees, associates.
So this is something that came out of not the White House, but the Sacramento Department of Justice, the attorney, U.S. attorney in Sacramento. And it began over a year ago, and some are saying that the initial investigations actually began in the Biden administration. So whatever the Trump administration involvement might be, this is something that's kind of old. So I found it interesting that that wasn't addressed. So how do you respond when you are accused of something, whether it be true or untrue? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557.
Look, just sit Newsom's wife in a room and say, Newsom's wife, look me straight in the eye. Did you do this? And if she laughs, she's guilty.
You think that laughing means you're guilty, right?
I mean, they would always do that.
I think that people sometimes might laugh because they're nervous, though, if you accuse somebody.
No, I remember so many times I was accused of something, and they told me to look them straight in the eye, and I would laugh or smile. They knew I was guilty.
Oh, yeah, that's what I do to my boys, by the way. I just say, you tell, and you look at me in the eye, and they can't do it. 888-528-2557. Jennifer in Inglewood, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, how are you this afternoon?
I'm good, Jennifer. How are you?
Good. I'd just like to say an answer to how would a Christian respond if you're accused of something. Well, a Christian should always respond honestly and forthright. If you're guilty, you should say you're guilty, like you said, and confess and maybe resign. And because if you don't respond, the first thing they're going to say is, well, they didn't deny it.
Yeah.
They didn't deny it. So you have to make some response, okay? And remember, as far as Trump, no matter where it started, or they say it started, Trump is behind a lot across the whole nation, okay? And his hand is in this. And he is vindictive. And he's going to go. He doesn't like Newsom. So I would say, no matter where it seems like it started, he's in it some kind of way because the Justice Department does not act without him.
But what if, and I think that doesn't make Newsom guilty or not guilty, right?
No.
So it's an interesting thing because, the person doing the accusing might not be guilty or might not be innocent either. Right. So there's a whole different way of response. But I think something you said there that matters a lot is if you're guilty of something, you just got to say it. Right. Or you got to go down a path where you got to be careful, I think, when you're dealing with the legal system and all of that, because you don't want to be, found guilty of something you didn't actually do. So you do have to be cautious. But you do have to address the things that you might be guilty of. And shifting the blame, even to somebody who people might want to blame, doesn't mean you didn't do it. It's an interesting thing. Jennifer, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. See, and that's the thing, is that if you're innocent, wouldn't you normally just want to put it out there? Wouldn't you say, I'm accused of X, Y, and Z. Here's the reasons that this didn't happen. 888-528-2557. Mike in Santa Clarita, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Thank you, sir. I'm a retired police officer, and the law was the law. I didn't make the law. I enforced the law. And what happens. If you want to defend yourself in court. That's what we have courts for, and that's what we pay a great deal of money to have those courts.
Yeah. So what do you think a person should do, that whether the governor or just anybody who's accused of something, whether they're guilty or not guilty? What's the difference in how they ought to respond?
Well, you take it to court, and you have hopefully a good attorney. And in the United States, we're going to give you an attorney, but you might have to pay a small portion of their fees. But this is somebody who's an attorney who's passed the bar. All these things are being given, and yet they're coming out of my taxes, and yet I don't get a say whether I get to enforce that or not.
Well, yeah. And, to me, I think, appreciate your phone call, Mike. I think there ought to be more guilty pleas in our court system than we have. Like, I understand it's a really important thing to, you're owed your day in court, even if you're guilty. A lot of times you should say not guilty because you do want to make sure that prosecutors are proving their case, and you want to make sure that you're not accused of something that you didn't do. So maybe there's 10 charges against you and you did 9 of them, but you don't want to be accused of number 10. if you were innocent of that charge, right? That there's something really important to all of that. However, it is there is something that if you're just guilty, or you should come at it at a different. Maybe you say nothing if you're in these cases. What's the right way to deal with this? And another caller brought up the idea that we just sort of expect politicians to lie and cover up and do all of that. How do we get past that? I think that has to end. I think nobody's perfect, right? But there's got to be, we can't be in a place where we're talking about fraud. We're talking about theft. I mean, what they're being accused of is manipulating nonprofits, their own nonprofits, for their own gain, ultimately, for houses and for political favors. There's a whole lot going on that is in the air as far as what this probably is about. 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Don in L.A., welcome to the Pastor Scott Show. Hi, Don, you there?
Yeah. Well, you want to know what the right thing to do is. There's two sides or elements to this thing. One is what the government is choosing to do, and the other is how Newsom is responding. And what the government is supposed to do is protect us from not just crime, but the worst crimes. It has to prioritize crimes in order of damage done to society. And with the avalanche of crime going on in our time, it's very obvious that they're not interested in that. In fact, Trump's involved in some of the worst of these crimes going on in corruption.
Well, the subject is how ought a person respond when they're accused?
Okay, that's the second part. Newsom is put in a very difficult situation as a Democrat because Republicans. Remember how Michelle Obama, who said once something like, "When they go low, we go high."
Right.
That's no longer operative because
was that ever actually operative? Who's the guy? It was Obama's. It was Obama's.
Nice in a Christian society, man. It'd be really nice in a Christian society.
No, I agree.
We don't have one.
I agree that that ought to be what we do.
Yeah.
But it was what was I can't remember his name. Obama's DOJ guy. He said, "Hey, when they go low, we kick, or when they go low, we go even lower." He contradicted her on purpose.
Well, that was one voice there, but whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is that when that's the game you're played, those are the rules you're played. That puts Newsom in a very difficult position because he either takes all this insult and all this abuse by Trump and does nothing and looks weak, or he fights back and then he's accused of being using violent language and the like, or saying things that are. He's defending himself in the court of public. We think that Trump does all the time. He does it all the time.
So,
in the court of public opinion.
But that doesn't make it right because Trump does it.
No
it doesn't.
kidding.
It doesn't make it
we
right.
Elected this guy.
But see,
why did we elect this guy then?
I think we elected this guy because there's a lot of Newsoms going on, and nobody is being held to account.
Oh,
I think that's
really?
a big part of it. Yep,
well,
I do.
That's a big improvement to put the fox in charge of the chicken coop.
I think that it exposes a whole lot of things are being exposed right now in our country. I think a lot of it's because everybody's mad, and we're looking at this going, gosh, maybe Trump, even if he's guilty of his own stuff, maybe somehow that's also bringing everything to light. In
it's an
all
election
of this.
year. That's what it is.
All right.
It's an election year.
Thank you, Don. 888-528-2557. See, the thing is that Newsom is blaming Trump, but this investigation has been going on maybe before Trump, maybe since the Biden administration. The story is that the Biden administration started it in 2021 because they were investigating, doing background checks on Newsom, maybe thinking about replacing Kamala Harris as vice president. There were other things that were going on back then, and then they stumbled upon some of these other things. I can play some of that when we come back, but the point really is, how do we respond? Because what Newsom is doing, let's say he's innocent, okay, and he's not guilty of anything. Well, the way he responded was to go and attack his accuser. He responded by attacking the person who accused him and not addressing any of the accusations. That's the wrong way to respond, whether you're innocent or guilty. It's wrong if you're innocent because now you make yourself look guilty. It's also, I think, wrong if you're guilty because now you make people realize that now you're covering something up. 888-528-2557. Javon, I'll get to your call when we come back. 888-528-2557. Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Pastor Scott Show. We're live. Go to pastorscottshow.com to find us online. Phone number is 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557.
Now, sources who spoke to me on the condition they remain anonymous told me that it's not the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington that's investigating him. It's the Eastern District of California, the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Sacramento, that is. Apparently, there are multiple investigations that started a year ago from whistleblowers who provided information to the U.S. Attorney's Office here.
That's Ashley Zavala, who is reporting about Newsom's claim that the Trump administration is going after him and his wife with an investigation. But what she is reporting is that actually, in this case, this investigation has been going on for a while, maybe back even into the Biden administration, and it's not coming from Washington. It's coming from Sacramento, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento. And so many people are saying, well, wait a minute, what is happening here? Now, what I thought about is when a person in leadership is accused of something, what do they do first? What gives the impression that they might be guilty versus innocent? Or what does a guilty person, what ought that person do? When you find yourself confronted, what do? I think a lot of us, what we want to do is attack the accuser, which is what we see. Or we claim persecution, or we want to change the subject. We blame our political enemies or our enemies of some other sort. Shouldn't we just be more honest? This is the pattern, right, of guilt. The first thing that Adam did when he was accused and he was guilty was what? Blamed his wife. The woman you gave me did it. And then what about you, Eve? And Eve blames the serpent. Nobody just said, I did it. Yep, I did it. You could even say, in these circumstances today, you could say, you know what, there's an investigation going. I'm not going to comment, but we'll see you in court. I mean, you could delay a response. It's an interesting thing. So how do we actually respond when somebody accused? What's the right way to respond when we're accused of something, whether we are innocent or whether we are actually guilty? We know whether we're innocent or guilty, most of the time. So what's the right way for a believer to respond once we are accused of something? Javon, is that how you say your name?
Javandi.
Oh, Javandi. Welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, Pastor Scott. It's been a long time.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
So I was listening to you say, what do we do?
Yeah, how do we respond if we're accused?
At this point, we're past that because it's like I don't put my trust in any of these politicians. They all lie as far as I'm concerned. But I find it interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've never heard you do a show on how Donald Trump should have reacted to certain things. And he's always running his mouth. So is he a big liar? Because he's always defending himself and blaming it on somebody else. So what's his story?
He shouldn't do any of that. And we have talked about that. But see, this isn't the what we started out to do is saying, let's just say all the bad things people think about Donald Trump are true. Let's put that aside. Because he's been around 11 years, and everybody's got an opinion, and they're right about some of it, right? Some of what he's accused of, maybe he did it. Some of what he's accused of, he didn't. How, and when we even think about how ought Donald Trump respond, most of the time he doesn't respond well, right? Most people, even Trump supporters, cringe with how he responds. But when we're looking at this, what I really want this to go now is how should we respond, you and me, when we're accused of something? Whether we're, on one hand, we might be accused of something and we're actually innocent, or sometimes we're accused of things and we're actually guilty. So how should we respond, and what should we be thinking about?
Okay, so as Christians, we know how we should respond, but do we even know if they're Christians? They could say that they are, right? But it's obvious in the way that they have responded.
But not those two guys, you and me. How should how should you and I respond if we're accused of something and we're actually innocent or actually guilty?
I think that if you're actually innocent, you are going to respond in a way of defending yourself, but not in a aggressive way. You're going to say, hey, I didn't do this. It will come out. The truth will come out. Blah blah blah. But then let's face it, Pastor Scott. Even Christians lie. You know, when people get scared, they lie for different reasons. Is it right? No. But, you know, they don't want to get embarrassed. They get scared. So we really can't say how anybody will react. We just have to hope that they will respond in a way that is dignified before Christ. We have to hope that. But anybody can lie.
That's true. And I think you're right that when somebody gets accused of something, even when they're innocent, there's a lot of emotion and a lot of fear and anger. And I think it's important to be on top of that. Javonda, thank you for calling the Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. What's your name in San Diego?
John.
Oh, John. It says JPHN. So we got a little typo. John, I should have figured that out, actually. Go ahead, John.
All right. Hey, thanks for taking my call today. Yeah, just kind of responding to what you were saying there. I mean, I look back at the way David responded when he got caught, with, about Bathsheba, and he said, I have sinned before God.
That's right.
And the thing is, just being objective, being able to be objective with that and being able to receive that, say, I did it, and having the humility to be able to admit that you did it. Sometimes that takes a few rounds with God to be able to, soften our hearts to be able to do that. And, because we're prideful and we don't like to admit that we're wrong. But it's like, if we're really walking with the Lord and we really want to please the Lord, we're going to say, something, that's not right. And I blew it. Okay. No matter what it is. And so, I mean, that's really all I wanted to say.
Yeah, but I think that is 100% right. And David is, I think, one of the best examples, because of Psalm 51. What's interesting is when David was confronted about his sin with Bathsheba, he didn't say, the media is after me. He didn't attack his enemies. He didn't shift the blame. He didn't change the subject.
Exactly.
He didn't say everyone's doing it. Instead, he said, against you only have I sinned, which he said to the Lord.
Right.
I'm
sorry to interrupt, but I mean, even after that, God still called him a man after his own heart.
That's right.
Even after he admitted that sin and he humbled himself before God, and it said God put away his sin, even though he had consequences and he had a reputation after that, but God restored him.
Yes,
and that's beautiful.
And I think that's a lesson for all of us, because not only do we still have forgiveness from the Lord when we are guilty, but when we don't shift the blame or lie or try to get out of it, all of that, and we just say, yeah, I did it when we're guilty, other people respect us for that too.
Dude, amen. 100%.
That is the thing. That it is different. Even when politicians come out and they say, yeah, I did that. You know what?
Yeah.
People, the walls come down. It's a rare thing, I think, with politics, but it is something that you see all the time with regular people, that when we just say, hey, yeah, I screwed up. And if it's illegal, we go face the consequences for those things. You know what happens then is that you get a lighter sentence. There's so many benefits to just being honest, even if you still get in trouble, even if you still take a loss. And that is something we should be thinking about. John or Jafin, which is what it looks like it says. Thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show today. 888-528-2557. See, I think that's the thing we kind of have to be prepared for, because even if you're innocent and you get accused of something, it is hard to not respond emotionally, and then you could get yourself in trouble. You can cover up something. Maybe Richard Nixon should have just come out and said, yes, ladies and gentlemen, they broke into the office and I fired them all. He should have just done that, right? If he would have just confessed it whenever he learned about it, whatever his actual guilt was, he probably would never have had to resign. That is an incredible thing when you think about that. In our own lives, when we are just open with our faults, sometimes you have to pay some consequence. Maybe it was something illegal. Maybe justice has to be done. I don't think apologizing or confessing means justice isn't done, but part of justice is mercy. Mercy is something that you get that you don't deserve at all. Now, you're guilty of something. Mercy is when you get less. Well, you're more likely to get mercy if you're just honest, if you just tell the truth, not just in a legal proceeding, but even just relationally. That is a big deal. So when I watch this happen in the politics, and I understand the politics is brutal, and maybe, sometimes I think politicians feel like I can't say I'm guilty of something because they're just going to use that against me. And we live in a time where that's probably to a certain degree true. But I do question whether that's true. I think people, even when it comes to Donald Trump stuff, everybody knows he's got big faults. Maybe that's one of the attractions. It's that it's just out there, right? I don't know. But I think that there is something to be said about this honesty. And David is one of the best examples of that. He just said, yeah, I did it. And he confessed his sin. And he took punishment, right? It was not the same. There were consequences. You can't manipulate God by confessing your sin either, right? You can't manipulate the system by doing all that. You got to have it in your heart. Anyway, all of us at some point in our life are going to be accused of something we didn't do, and we're going to get accused of something we did do at some point because all of us are dealing with that. I think it's worth thinking about it ahead of time and just thinking about our response and just being honest and not trying to tear somebody else down because they're worse than us or they did it too. Doesn't matter. It's just like David said. Really, our sins are against the Lord. Against you, you only have I sinned, he said. All right. Interesting discussion, everybody, today. This is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to follow us online. We're live every day from 3 to 5 on the Pastor Scott Show. You can find your station and all of our social media at Pastor Scott Show. Give us a follow at Pastor Scott Show. We will see you tomorrow live from 3 to 5. Good night.